The council chamber reeked of wax and smoke, the air heavy with the weight of secrets. Eryndor sat at the long table. The lords gathered like wolves in velvet, their jeweled hands clutching goblets of spiced wine as though it could drown the fear in their eyes. Behind them loomed priests, stiff in crimson robes, their gaze as sharp as blades. At the head of the table, King Aldred, Eryndor's father, leaned forward on his throne, his once powerful frame diminished by illness. His voice was a rasp, but still carried command. "The Ashborn rebels strike at our gates," he croaked. "Our people turn against us. Our fields are dust, our coffers hollow, and still my son sits silent." All eyes turned to Eryndor. He rose slowly, the weight of their stares like chains. "The rebels rise not from hatred, but hunger. Slaughter will not end this rebellion. Only renewal will." Murmurs rippled around the chamber. Lord Edric sneered. "Renewal? Speak plain, boy. Will you wield the Ember, or will you cower behind riddles like the priests?" Eryndor's chest burned, the Ember stirring uneasily, as if it too listened for his answer. Before he could speak, Archpriest Kale cut in, his voice sharp. "The Ember cannot be touched. To wield it is to invite ruin. Avalon lives so long as it remains veiled and untouched. And yet Avalon dies." A lord slammed his goblet down, red wine spilling like blood across the table. The chamber dissolved into shouting. Lord demanding war, priest demanding obedience, soldiers demanding action. And Eryndor stood at the center of it all, tore between those sworn to crown and gods, and the fire that burned in him, urging him toward another path. That night, the fire would not let him rest. He found himself once more in a hidden vault, pacing before the great tapestry of Avalon's founding. Lyanna was already there, cloaked in shadow. "You've heard," she asked quietly. "The council tears itself apart," he said, his voice hoarse. "Half demand I unleash the Ember. The other half would see me dead before they let me touch it." Her gaze was steady, silver bright in the candle's glow. "And what do you want, Eryndor?" He stopped, staring at her. "I want," his throat tightened. "I want to save them. All of them. But I don't know if I can." She stepped closer, her hand brushing his. A simple touch, yet sent the Ember surging within him, heat curling through his veins. "You are stronger than you believe," she whispered. "But strength will not save Avalon alone. You must choose where your loyalty lies, with crown, with faith, or with truth." "And with you," he murmured before he could stop himself. Silence stretched between them, thick with everything unspoken. Before she could answer, the chamber door banged open. Eryndor whirled, hand to his sword. A soldier staggered in, face pale, armor slick with blood. "My prince, the rebels breach the northern gate. Lord Edric rides against them, but..." His voice faltered. There was betrayal. The rebels were led by one of our own. Eryndor's blood ran cold. "Who?" The soldier's lips trembled. "Lord Edric. He rides not against the rebels, but with them." The word struck like a blade. Lord Edric, the loudest voice demanding the Ember's power, had been feeding the rebellion from within. Lyanna's face darkened, unreadable. "Blood and oaths," she murmured. "This is only the beginning." Eryndor gripped the soldier's shoulder. "Sound the bells. Gather the guard. If Avalon burns, we will not let it burn without a fight." By dawn, the city was a battlefield. Smoke curled into the sky, black against the pale morning. Rebel banners of crimson and ash snapped in the wind as they surged to the northern streets. The king's soldiers clashed with them in a storm of steel and screams, blades flashing, shields splintering. From the citadel walls, Eryndor watched, fury and despair warring within him. Beside him, Lyanna's hand rested on her dagger, her expression sharp. "They will not stop," she said. "Not until the Ember is theirs. They'll tear Avalon apart first," Eryndor growled. He felt the Ember flare hotter, pulsing in time with his heartbeat. The urge to unleash it pressed against his chest. Fierce and terrible, he could see it. Fire sweeping through the streets, scattering rebels like chaff, saving his city. And yet Lyanna's words whispered through him. "Strength alone will not save Avalon. You must choose where your loyalty lies." If he unleashed the Ember, he might save Avalon or he might destroy it. And if he did nothing, Avalon would fall all the same. That night, when the battle's clamor faded to uneasy silence, Eryndor knelt before his father's throne. King Aldred's breath rattled in his chest, his crown tilted, his skin gray with sickness. "My son," he rasped, "swear to me. Swear you will not let Avalon die." Eryndor bowed his head, torn apart. "I swear it, father." The words burned like iron on his tongue, for he did not know what oath he had truly made, to save Avalon or to save the Ember fire that now lived within him and Lyanna both. Blood had been spilled, oaths had been spoken, and in their wake, Eryndor knew only this. Avalon stood on the edge of ruin, and the choice he made next would decide whether it fell to ash or burned brighter than ever before. The bells tolled like funeral dirges over the city. Eryndor raced to the citadel's torchlit halls, his boots echoing against stone slick with ash. Each toll carried with it another wound, another breach, another cry for help unanswered. Avalon, the heart of kingdoms, the jewel of the West, was breaking. Outside, the night burned. Flames devoured timber roofs. Smoke poured into the heavens, and the clash of steel reverberated through every street. The rebels had not only breached the northern gate, they had poured inward, their numbers bolstered by deserters and starving peasants who believed the Ember would save them. At the citadel's gates, the king's banners fluttered in tatters. Soldiers struggled to hold the line, but the tide pressed harder with each wave. Lyanna found him at the ramparts, her hood drawn back, her silver hair gleaming like molten moonlight in the fire's glow. "You cannot hold them," she said bluntly. Eryndor's grip tightened on the stone parapet. "I must. If the citadel falls, Avalon falls." Avalon is already burning. Her eyes flickered toward him, steady but soft. What matters is what rises from its ashes. He turned to her, the ember flaring in his chest as if an answer to her words. "If I unleash it," his throat closed, "I don't know if I'll save them or destroy them." She stepped closer, her hand brushing his arm. "Then don't unleash it for them. Unleash it for what you believe in." Her touch steadied him and terrified him all at once. Before he could answer, a horn blared, deep, triumphant, wrong. Eryndor peered through the smoke toward the northern gate and froze. Lord Edric rode at the front of the rebel host, crimson banner in hand, his once golden armor darkened with soot. At his side, priests of Kareth carried relics twisted with forbidden sigils, their mouths chanting in a tongue that curdled the air. Lyanna's breath caught. That is not rebel magic. That is Karetha's. As if to prove her right, the ground split beneath the rebels' feet, and from the fissure rose shapes of flame and ash, creatures not wholly of this world. They screamed with voices like shattering glass, and the soldiers of Avalon faltered before them. The burning had begun. Eryndor fought until his arms ached, until blood and sweat covered him like second skin. Lyanna moved beside him, swift as shadow, blade flashing, eyes fierce. Together they cut through the chaos, neither yielding ground. But for every enemy they felled, two more rose. The ember pulsed hotter, a drumbeat in his veins. He could feel its hunger, its yearning to be released, to burn all that opposed him. At last, they found themselves forced back into the citadel's great hall. The wounded littered the marble floor, the air thick with smoke and prayers. At the far end, King Aldred sat slumped on his throne, crown slipping, eyes dim. "Father!" Eryndor gasped, kneeling beside him. The king's lips trembled. "The Ember! Only the Ember can end this. Take it, my son. Burn them all if you must, but let Avalon live." Eryndor's heart wrenched. His father's command was both crown and curse. Lyanna knelt beside him, her voice urgent. "If you unleash it without control, Avalon dies with them. You know this." Eryndor looked between them, his father's failing eyes, Lyanna's fierce plea. The ember roared in his chest. He rose, sword in hand, and strode to the center of the hall. The doors shuddered as rebels battered against them. With cracking, iron bending, priest chants seeped through the splinters, warping the air with unnatural heat. Eryndor raised his blade. The ember surged, flame licking along the steel until it burned white hot. The doors burst open. Rebels poured through, led by Lord Edric, whose eyes glowed with the same corrupt fire as the Cairth priests. "Yield the Ember, boy," he thundered, "or watch your city die screaming." Eryndor lifted his sword. "Then come and take it." The clash was apocalyptic. Fire met steel, shadow met flame. The hall became a storm of magic and blood. Eryndor fought as though the Ember itself guided his hand, each strike burning brighter. Each wound healed as quickly as it came. Lyanna's blade danced beside his, sharp and sure, her presence the only thing tethering him to himself. But with every swing, every flare, the Ember grew wilder. The fire spread from his sword to his armor, from his armor to the marble floor. Rebels burned where they stood, screaming as the blaze consumed them. "Eryndor!" Lyanna shouted, her hand grabbing his arm. "Stop! You'll burn everything." He saw it then. The wounded soldiers, Avalon's banners, even the pillars of the citadel catching fire. His father coughing on the throne as smoke closed in. And in that moment, Eryndor realized the truth. The Ember was not only Avalon's last hope, it was its doom. He fell to his knees, shoving the fire back with everything in him, forcing it down, caging it inside. The hall dimmed, though the air still smoldered with heat. Around him lay ruin, bodies charred, banners half-burned, marble cracked. Lord Edric had fled into the smoke. The priests of Cairth had vanished like shadows. The rebels had scattered. Avalon still stood, but it stood broken. And Eryndor knew the burning was not over. It had only begun. That night, Eryndor stood alone atop the citadel's highest tower. The city below smoldered, a husk of itself. Cries of mourning carried on the wind. Lyanna joined him quietly, her cloak wrapped tight, her expression unreadable. "You saved them," she said softly. "I destroyed them," he whispered. "I saw it, Lyanna, what the Ember wants. It will not stop with rebels. It will not stop with Cairth. It will consume all until nothing remains." She touched his hand, and though the fire within him roared at her nearness, it also quieted just slightly. "Then we must find a way to master it," she said, "or to end it, together." He turned to her, searching her silver-bright eyes, and for a heartbeat, he believed it might be possible. But far to the north, beyond the ruined gates, a horn sounded, long, low, and terrible. The enemy was not finished, and neither was the Ember. The night was not silent. From the highest tower of Avalon Citadel, Eryndor could hear the ruin of his kingdom as clearly as if the stones themselves wept. The cries of the wounded in the streets below, the cinders crackling the bones of houses half-burned, the distant clash of steel, but alas, the royal guard held ground against the rebels. The smoke of Avalon carried not only ash but voices, prayers, curses, the thin keening of children. And beneath it all, beneath every sound, a deeper thrum. The Ember, it pulsed in his chest like another heart, fierce and restless, each beat pressing fire through his veins until his hands trembled. He had caged it once in the throne room, forced it back when it had nearly devoured all, but now it clawed at him in the silence, whispering of release. His father's words returned to him like a curse. "Burn them all if you must, but let Avalon live." But Avalon was dying. Lyanna stood at his side, her cloak hooded against the wind. Those strands of her silver hair had slipped free to shimmer in the firelight. She said nothing for a long time, only watched the city with those steady, unflinching eyes. She had grown up in enemy courts, daughter of bloodlines sworn against Avalon. And yet here she stood, holding its ruin with the same grief he felt. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. "They will come again. Edric will not relent. Not while the priests of Cairth whispered in his ear." Eryndor's jaw tightened. He had seen the twisted fire those priests had conjured, the things of ash that rose from the earth at their command. Magic Avalon had forbidden centuries ago, banished under threat of death. And yet now it returned, carried on rebellion's back, wearing the face of his oldest friend. "Their fire is not like the Ember," Lyanna continued, turning her gaze to him. "It corrupts. It binds. Yours lives." "Lives," he echoed bitterly. "And how many has it slain to prove that life?" She reached for his hand, resting her fingers lightly against his, though the heat of the ember flared at her touch. "That is because you fight it alone." He turned to her sharply. "You don't understand. Every time I draw on it, I feel less myself, as if I am nothing but a vessel for flame. If I yield fully," his voice faltered. He thought of the charred bodies in the hall, the banners crumbling to ash, the smoke that had nearly choked his father where he Saturday. Avalon will burn before it is saved. Lyanna did not flinch. Then perhaps the ember was never meant for one soul alone. Her words struck him like a blade between ribs. He stared at her, searching her face, but she met his gaze without fear. "What are you saying? That it is not your burden only?" Her hand tightened on his. "I have felt it too. When you falter, when you rage, when you nearly lose yourself, it stirs in me as well. It binds us, Eryndor, whether you wish it or not." The ember stirred at her words, as if to confirm. Heat rose between their joined hands, not scorching this time, but steady, almost harmonious. Eryndor drew a ragged breath. "If that is true, then it is not your power to master alone," she finished. Silence stretched between them, heavy as the smoke below. Before he could answer, the sound of horns split the night. They both turned to the northern horizon, where the gates of Avalon lay broken. Firelight flickered there, but not the red of torches. This light was darker, stranger, a deep crimson shot through with black. The ground itself seemed to shudder. "They march again," Lyanna whispered. Eryndor felt the ember quicken, burning at the sight, begging release. He clenched his fists. "Then we meet them before the walls fall." They rode together through streets, half-choked with rubble and corpses. The people of Avalon watched them pass with hollow eyes, some bowing, others spitting prayers, all clinging to hope like drowning men to driftwood. At the outer square, the remnants of the royal guard gathered. No more than 200 men where once there had been thousands. Their armor was dented, their banners burned, but when they saw Eryndor, they raised their blades weakly in salute. At their head stood Ser Kalin, scarred and weary, his great shield splintered. "The rebels are at the outer ward," he reported hoarsely. "Edric leads them, and the priests, gods preserve us, my prince, the priests are summoning again." Eryndor looked at Lyanna. She nodded grimly. "They mean to break Avalon in one night. Then one night is all I will give them." He dismounted, drawing his sword. The ember flared instantly along the blade, fire licking its edges, though this time he fought to temper it. He turned to the men. "Avalon stands tonight, or it does not stand at all. Fight with me. Fight for your homes, your children, your dead. Fight until the last stone falls, and even then fight still." The soldiers roared what voice they had left, and the gates of the ward shuddered. They came like a tide, rebels in rags and rusted mail, deserters with hollow eyes, mercenaries promised false salvation, all surging forward with a madness born of hunger and the priest's whispers. Behind them loomed Lord Edric, his once noble face twisted, his eyes burning with red light not his own. And around him, the priests of Kerith raised their hands, chanting in that blasphemous tongue. The earth split. From the fissures clawed forth creatures of living ash, their bodies firebound, their eyes voids of black flame. The men of Avalon faltered. Eryndor did not. "Forward!" he bellowed, the ember blazing as he leapt into the fray. The clash was thunderous. Steel met steel, flesh met flame. The ember poured through him, every strike a comet, every parry a storm. Lyanna fought beside him, her blade swift and precise, but when her hand brushed his arm in battle, the ember surged differently, steadier, sharper, as if their union bound its wild hunger into purpose. Together they cut through rebel ranks, scattering men like wheat, but the ash creatures were another matter. Eryndor's fire struck them and they did not fall. Instead, they fed on it, growing brighter, hotter. They lunged at him, clawed at him, their voices like shrieks of broken glass. For a moment he staggered. Lyanna cried out, pressing her back to his. "Eryndor!" And then something shifted. The ember within him leapt not in fury, but in resonance. It flowed not only through his veins, but through the bond between them, into Lyanna's hands, her blade, her breath, Her sword ignited with the same white flame, but instead of feeding the ash creatures, it seared them. One struck at her, and her blade cleaved it in two, the body crumbling to dust. Her eyes widened. Eryndor felt it too. The Ember was not as alone. Together, they burned brighter, steadier, truer. For the first time, hope surged. They fought as one, flame and steel, heart and heart. Every strike from Eryndor was answered by Lyanna. Every falter steadied by her hand. The ash creatures screamed and fell. The priests faltered in their chants. Even Lord Edric reeled before the blaze that met him. But as the tide turned, the embers' whispers deepened. Yes, together, burn them, burn all, let none remain. The voice was no longer faint. It was inside him, around him, a chorus of fire. He saw visions in the heat. Avalon reborn in flame, its people remade as ash and ember, its throne wreathed in eternal fire with him as its vessel. He staggered, gasping, clutching his chest. Eryndor, Lyanna's hand seized his. Listen to me, not like this. The Ember wants more than victory. It wants everything. He looked at her, at the terror and faith mingled in her eyes. The Ember flared between them, urging, pleading, hungering. He could feel it waiting for his choice. Burn all, save none, or something else. Lyanna's fingers pressed tighter. It is bound to us both. Do you see? It is not a weapon. It is a choice. Yours. Ours. The battle raged around them. Ash creatures shrieked. Priests howled their curses. Edric roared his betrayal. But in that moment, there was only her hand in his, the ember blazing not in fury but in harmony. He realized in the truth. The ember was not destruction nor salvation. It was what made flame, and it would become whatever they chose together. He drew a shuddering breath. Then we choose. Lyanna's lips parted, her eyes shining. Together, and the ember roared, not as a beast unleashed, but as a fire reborn. The battlefield lit with white flame, pure and blinding, but it did not consume Avalon's men. It wrapped them, shielded them, turned their broken blades to burning swords. The ash creatures shrieked and crumbled. The priests of Kerith recoiled, their dark chants faltering. Even Edric stumbled, his corrupted fire dimming before the blaze. He stared at Eryndor with horror. What have you done? Eryndor stepped forward, Lyanna's hand still in his. His voice rang like flame on steel. Not what the Ember demanded, what we chose. The rebel line broke before them, men dropping weapons, some fleeing, some weeping. The Kerith priests screamed as their magic unraveled. The tide shifted, utterly. But as the last of the ash creatures fell to dust, Eryndor felt the ember's weight still burning in his chest. Not gone, not ended, waiting. For this was only the beginning. The battle ended by dawn. The rebels scattered into the countryside. The priests vanished into shadow, and Avalon still stood, though scarred, bloodied, burning. In the citadel's ruined hall, Eryndor and Lyanna stood side by side as the surviving lords and captains gathered, their faces grim. Ser Kalen bowed low. You saved us, my prince. You and her. His eyes flicked to Lyanna warily, but no one dared challenge what they had seen. Eryndor felt the ember thrum, still beneath his ribs, restless, dangerous. But when Lyanna's hand brushed his, it quieted, just enough. He looked at the weary faces before him, at his wounded kingdom, and knew the truth. The ember was not theirs to survive by, not as it was, unless they mastered it or destroyed it. Avalon's salvation would yet turn to ash. And far to the north, horns sounded again, not rebels this time, but something greater. Edric and Kerith had only been the beginning. The last ember had awakened, and the world would burn or be remade by its flame.